My name is Jennie, and I created the Shifting to Soar membership, and this is Megan, and she is like my number one gal. She's going to take us through the training today. So we're just going to go ahead and get started.
Okay. All right. So hi, I'm Megan, just like Jennie had shared. And tonight we're going to be discussing phonics and phonemic awareness. So this chat will be about basically discussing the differences between phonics and phonemic awareness. They're both extremely important skills for our beginning readers to have, and they're very different as well. We will also share membership resources brand new to our membership. So if you watched the video from last month, we discussed the 5 pillars of literacy. And tonight we will be kind of zooming in on 2 of them, phonemic awareness and phonics. This is just kind of a graphic, a graphic that I found on Google, and it's from the National Center on Improving Literacy. Just to kind of introduce what phonemic awareness is, I thought that I would quick discuss kind of what phonological awareness is, because they can kind of be 2 terms that you might hear often. And a lot of people don't realize that there is kind of a difference. Phonological awareness is this umbrella term. And so you can see right here that the umbrella has different skills that are underneath it. And so within phonological awareness, it's the ability to recognize that spoken words are made up of individual sounds. And there's one small piece, which is phonemic awareness, and that's actually the most advanced skill for phonological awareness. You can also see that there's some other skills under here, like rhyming, alliteration, sentence segmentation, syllables, and then onset rhyme. And then it brings us to the phonemic awareness. So that's kind of the piece that we're going to talk about tonight, and really understanding the differences between phonemic awareness and phonics. The term phonemic awareness is the ability to hear, identify, and manipulate individual sounds. And so this essentially means that students are not seeing words or letters. They are hearing and listening and speaking. And so according to research from the NIH National Reading Panel, phonemic awareness instruction is most effective when students are learning to manipulate the phonemes, and there's focus on 1 or 2 specific types, as well as having small groups. So right here, these are kind of the areas to consider when thinking about practicing phonemic awareness. So the first piece that we have is isolation. And so that's when students are looking at phonemes specifically within a word, and you're isolating that specific sound. And again, students are not looking at words. That's phonics. They're hearing, they're listening. And you can still use manipulatives when you're doing phonemic awareness activities. You can use counters, or students might tap with their hands, but essentially it's all about hearing and speaking. So then we also have identity, and that is identifying a specific phoneme within a word. So for example, you have the word map, and what's the first sound in map? And so they're identifying that very first sound. And so when you're thinking about the beginning sound in mat, then you're also adding in more words within that, so that they're able to think about which which word has the same beginning sound. So for example, mat, pen, lake, moon, which word has the same beginning sound? And so students are identifying a word that has the same beginning sound, mat, moon. They both start with All right. The next one is categorization. And so that's when you think about giving students words. I've also seen teachers show objects as well, and it's basically what word does not belong. So students are categorizing those different words. So for example, cat, maybe you have a cat, a cup, and a little picture of jam or something, and you ask them which one does not belong. And students have to be able to identify that, well, jam doesn't belong because it starts with the j sound instead of the k sound. And these can be really fun games. Like I said, for students, you can have manipulatives like the pictures or the little objects as well. And it's, not all just hearing and speaking, because they're also seeing. But students are not looking at words. You're not necessarily showing them the word cat, cup, jam, because that would be really easy for a student to be able to see, well, cat and cup both have the C, jam has the J. What you really want them to be able to do is identify that word that doesn't belong based on what they can hear. Okay, the next one is blending. And so this skill within phonemic awareness is when students are able to put the sounds together. So if you segment the sounds and give them individual sounds, then their job is to blend the sounds together to be able to say the word. So for example, if I were to give the student the word pig, I might say, okay, tell me the word pig. And then students go pig. And there's lots of different ways that, you can work on blending with your students. You can do continuous blending and different things like that. Okay, the next one is segmenting. And this is the opposite kind of, I like to think of it the opposite of blending. So I give the students, the word pig, and then they're the ones segmenting the sounds. And we'll ask them, how many sounds did you hear? And then they can tap them out. Or this may be another chance to use manipulatives. We have a resource in the membership where students can push counters up, kind of like Elkin boxes, if you've used those before. And so that's just another way for students to be able to understand that there are 3 sounds in the word pig. And as they're segmenting the word, they would be pushing up a sound. Okay, the next skill is deletion. So an example of this would be, say the word stop. The student goes, stop. Okay, take away the sound. And then students have to think, okay, if I take away the sound, what word do I have? Top. And so you can kind of see how some of these skills can be a chance to really have like higher level thinking within your reading level. And that's kind of why phonemic awareness is the much more advanced skill underneath phonological awareness, because there are so many different ways that you can practice these skills. And there are so many different ways that we want our students to be able to understand and be able to, break apart phonemes. The next one is addition. And so that's where I add a letter, the opposite of, take away the S from stop. I might say, okay, add the letter S to the beginning of top. And then what's the new word? Stop. You may have also seen different phonics programs will do this where, you start with one word and then you're changing it and you're manipulating it and you're just continuing to change, change the middle sound, change the beginning sound. Okay, now add this sound to the end, and you just keep changing until you end up with, a whole nother word that's from like a completely different word family. So that's kind of what phonemic awareness is. And this is exactly what a lot of these skills are. And then the last one is substitution. And so this would be another form of, manipulating the word. Instead of adding or deleting, I might have them substitute or put something else in place. So for example, say top. Okay, change the t to what's the new word? And then students have to think, okay, if I take away the T and put in an 8, hop. And I actually really enjoyed teaching phonemic awareness to my students. I thought it was always really fun. Okay, so that's phonemic awareness. So again, it's manipulating phonemes, and you're focusing on hearing and speaking and manipulating them that way.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, and it's great you were talking about doing this in the small groups, because that's where you're really going to find out what kids are really grasping this and who still needs that extra support and that extra help. I know that was something in the small groups that you could always it's easy to figure out, who's not grasping these concepts and who is.
Yes, I would definitely agree. And it's typically, phonemic awareness is not typically it's not the entire piece of your, of your reading small group that you have with your students. You may just do like a quick little 2-minute thing. And like Jenny said, that's your way of quick, doing a quick formative assessment to see who has it and who doesn't, and who needs more practice.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Group and move on. Definitely.
And so after students really understand, the phonemic awareness piece, then we kind of can move into phonics. And now I say they don't have to master phonemic awareness necessarily. The way that I mean they have an understanding of it is, okay, now we can, continue on with phonemic awareness, but let's add in some phonics pieces. And so this is when we look at the relationship between letters and sounds. And again, phonics is done best when it's taught systematically and explicitly. So that's teaching with maybe some sort of scope and sequence. You have skills that are built upon each other. And, it's not random. You're not just going, today I'm going to teach the at family. You want to have some sort of, strategy behind the way that, behind the skills that you're teaching, because that will help them be able to learn the skills and eventually be able to decode, because that is, the goal. And then once they can decode, they can move on with more higher advanced reading skills. And the difference between decoding and encoding is decoding is translating the written words by using phonics, and then encoding is being able to spell. So that's using the letter sound relationships. And that's kind of also where phonemic awareness comes into place as well, because students are able to, manipulate sounds and words. If they have, an understanding of one word, they could potentially use that, what they hear and the knowledge of their letter sounds, they could use that to help them spell another word that may be very similar within, that it could be like a word family of some sort. But so the differences between phonics and phonemic awareness, they're like very slight, I would like to say, but also very different in the same aspect. You need one to be able to do, the other. Okay. And I just kind of threw in some quick little strategies. So, if you're like, well, where do I start with phonics? If you have the ability to put a sound wall up, you can put a sound wall up. Sound walls can work for phonemic awareness as well. As if you're not showing words and, you're working on just, talking about the shape of the mouth when you're, speaking different letter sounds or patterns. Sound walls also kind of go into play with this second component, but using visuals that have keywords. So this is, having a keyword for the letter A, there's always, apple or whatever, you may use. We do have some in the membership as well. Our sound wall has keywords that also go with it. So if you haven't, looked at that, we did do a live call 2 months ago on the sound wall. So go ahead and check out that to know more about that. But using a sound wall and having visuals with keywords are just ways that you can support your students with phonics instruction. And the third strategy is just to really focus on being explicit and systematic when you're teaching your phonics skills. And again, using a scope and sequence can really come into play, whether your district has one or whether you decide to kind of, research and choose one on your own. We do use, in our membership, we do have 2 that we go off of currently, but there are many out there as well that can be used. But using that scope and sequence, again, will allow you to be able to be systematic when you're teaching. And essentially you want to start, with the easier skills and built upon, more. Once students have knowledge of a few letters, they're able to start decoding. And so you have to teach students a few letters to be able to make words and then begin to decode. And that's one of the really great things about using a scope and sequence is it just kind of has it all laid out for you. And then, of course, playing games with your students is always really fun. There are so many different, games that you can play with phonics and with phonemic awareness as well. And just use them during your, your reading time. If you're with a small group, you can have games out for your other students where they're working on different skills. You can even play games in your small groups as well. And the last piece, just a little bit of advice, is really try to be strategic with collecting data and the way that you form your small groups. Using your scope and sequence to help you be able to form your small groups can also be really beneficial, because if if you are teaching this skill, but your students are back a few skills, you want to be able to use that, that data from your small groups to be able to see, well, what exactly do I need to be working on with this student? Because, or this group of kids, for example, I'm thinking, once students get to first grade, they may have, they may still be mixing up some of their vowel sounds, and maybe they have I and E confused or something. And so that may be an area you want to focus on with your students within a small group, because they'll throughout their scope and sequence, they're going to struggle with reading and decoding certain words because they keep getting the E and I mixed up potentially. So just one little example, but forming your small groups and collecting data is 100% recommended when you are, having, phonics instruction. And there are many different ways that you can go ahead and organize your small groups as well. But one of them is essentially to just kind of use your scope and sequence and go, okay, I've taught, letter sounds. Okay, now I know we've been working on CVCs, short vowels. Okay, now we're on blends and we're doing S blends. I don't know. And you maybe have 3 groups based off of, those areas that you've already taught. So I saw this on Google and I kind of created my own after looking at it, but I thought it was kind of interesting. So, you kind of told me about all three of these areas. Now, what does it look like, when you look at all of them together? And so we're going to just think about the word stop and kind of go underneath each category and just kind of see what are students working on when they're specifically working underneath that skill. Okay, so within phonological awareness, remember that's the umbrella term of kind of manipulating and hearing and speaking. And so essentially when students hear the word stop, they know that it's one word. And so when we talk in a sentence, we have words. And so if I were to say, okay, you need to stop doing that, students know that word stop, that's one word. Rhyming is another piece to phonological awareness. What word rhymes with stop? We've got hop, we've got pop, we've got shop. And then onset rhyme is also part of phonological awareness. So that's when thinking about, okay, it starts with the letter S and then it ends with the letter P. Go through the rest of the letters as well. So that's phonological awareness. Now, again, remember, phonemic awareness is a small piece to the umbrella of phonological awareness. And that's when they're really getting deep into that word and really working on manipulating it. So for example, we have, okay, I hear the individual sounds in stop. I can manipulate the sounds in stop. And, I can take away the S and now I have the word top. I can change the middle sound to an A and then I have stap, different things like that. And one thing I did forget to mention with phonemic awareness is there is that piece of nonsense words that, sometimes is important too, because students have to be able to manipulate sounds no matter if it's a real word or not. And sometimes they may look at you like, okay, that's not a real word, but I'll say it anyway. And it's just another important piece, because as they get older, they'll, learn to be able to, correct themselves if they make mistakes, because they might say, that doesn't sound right. Maybe I should try decoding this word again to see if I can, figure my errors out on my own. So that was one thing I did forget to mention, but manipulating the sounds does come within that. There may be some nonsense words that they may make. And then the last piece is blending the sounds together to say stop. So that's when, I give you the sounds and you're going to blend them all together and, repeat the words stop. And then phonics, that's when students would actually see the word written out. So maybe you have it on a card, maybe they have it a whiteboard in front of them and they actually are writing it. And you can still do the same things within phonemic awareness where you're manipulating sounds. However, they see the word now. So they're actually making that connection between the letter and the sound that they hear. All right. So now that we've kind of done this deep dive into, the three different areas, what can I do with this, with, each of these, and how can I use membership? So this is one activity that you can do, and it's isolating beginning sounds. So as you can see, these are picture cards, and each of our membership resources has directions as well. So I'm not going to go over, the directions and things like that. You are more than welcome to kind of look through. The different categories are on the side as well. So you can go to, phonemic awareness or phonics, phonological awareness to be able to find these activities. Just to kind of point out, you see these pictures right here. There's no words, there's no letters. So they're simply looking at the pictures and then they're making those connections. And so students are looking for the words, the pictures that begin with the same sound. So button, heart, ball. Okay, which words? Button, ball, and so on and so forth. Then we also have these like task cards or directions written out. So this is kind of what I was talking about, those different areas of focus within phonemic awareness. This kind of gives you a nice little script of what you can do to work on deleting or adding. So those were the two areas that I had talked about, addition and deletion. But it just kind of lays it all out there for you. So you don't have to go and create your own, your own little step-by-step,
Yeah, I know. When I would try to do this just like on the fly, like if I'd have a couple minutes, before we're going to lunch or something,
Yeah.
we're all lined up or whatever, I would have a hard time like just thinking of stuff, on the fly. So I really wanted to make these. And then I would actually put a set of these like by my door on a ring, and then I could just grab it and it was right there. And it was just a really quick, activity to do when you just have that extra minute or two.
Yeah, I love that. Having it available like you said, putting these on a ring. They're really small little cards too. So you can laminate them, cut them out, and then they're there. And, subs can use them, or, if you have, student teacher or something, they can quick pull it out too. It's super easy. But yeah, like Jennie said, it's hard to think of it on the fly. And so it's all right there for you. And again, that's underneath the phonemic awareness within the membership, I believe. So here are just 2 sample activities for phonological awareness. So we have some onset rhymes. What's the word? And so there's directions here. Again, you see just pictures. You do not really see the words because they're working on those sounds and things like that. And then we also have some rhyming pictures as well. So this is kind of like a matching game where they're identifying the 2 pictures that rhyme. These would be great center activities. And then one membership resource that I think is awesome, and I wish that I had access to it when I was in the classroom, is the Rockin' Phonics program that Jennie created. And there's 5 days of activities within the skill. And these are just a couple of the different slides, but it's a PowerPoint. So you would present the PowerPoint and then students would go through the slides, and there's different things that they do each day. Sometimes they're repeating activities too, but this is really cool if you have some really squirrely kids, the drum and strum. So they're saying the picture and then they're, beating on the drums. And then when they blend the sounds together, they strum their guitar. So it's just kind of a way to kind of get their whole body moving when they're doing it. They work on putting sounds together to make the pictures and then identifying those sounds with letters. And then there's also word sorts, and then there's games. So it's a really cool resource. There's lots of different skills too. It's not just the CVC short vowels. So go ahead and take a look at that within the membership as well. That might be something to do, especially if you're like, I kind of just need like a warm up or something to do with my students for phonics. Might be a great place to start.
Yeah, so I created this several years ago, actually, and one of the favorite times of the day of the students, because they would get up and moving. They had their whiteboards and markers to be able to write the words on there. And like the drum and strum, I really liked because they would stand up, and then you've got cat, and when they would drum, I would have them. They actually go across over their arms, and then that gets that cross interaction going on, which is great for brain development and things like that too. So yeah, this is like one of our favorite times of the day. It took about 20 minutes every day to do the entire thing, so the game rotation and everything, but they were ready for Rockin' Phonics every day. So,
and then another great resource for phonics is to look at these word mapping worksheets that we have, again, just like the Rockin' Phonics, different skills. But essentially, students will say the picture word, they tap it and map it, graph it, and then write the words on the line. So it's just another way to kind of put together all of the skills they've been working on as well. So this would be a great center activity or just independent activity for your students to be able to do once they've learned the skill.
All right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up tonight. We will be adding this into the membership, or you can find it under the meetups. All right. We'll see you later.